Designing my future, planning a 1 year or a 5 year plan, I have lived certainly in a planned way. Now I am almost 60 years old and looking back at the past, why did I live so tight? Even if I lived slowly or lived roughly, I would have never thought that I would end up here. I approached the sleeping old man and asked him loudly in his ear, "Sir, how old are you this year?" The old man, who looked around surprised, gave me an unpleasant look for waking him up. "Why? For what? You don't need to know." The old man made a sulky face, snapped the floor with his cane, and threatened me. Park told me that he was 96 years old. Most of the old people in wheelchairs were so small that they were like 5 or 6 year olds. This elder will be 101 years old tomorrow. This old woman looked like a woman of the Chosun dynasty because of her done up hair. The boy approached her with a mobile phone camera. "Grandma, you're so pretty. It's hard to see a woman doing up her hair these days." The old woman's shoulders went up when the boy told her that she was pretty. When the boy pressed his mobile phone camera, the sound of panoramic pictures was as loud as photo shoots of many reporters. The other old women were staring at the woman taking photos with the boy. They seemed to be jealous. In the next wheelchair, an old woman, tied with a string of layers all over her body, sat with an angry look on her face. I thought she would throw out some profanity, but she did not make any noise, only with her lips twitching like an orangutan. As soon as one of the social workers untied the string, the old woman's body slipped down from the wheelchair like a mollusk. As soon as the old woman slipped and her hands touched her socks, she pulled them off and threw them at me. She is 15 years younger than the woman doing up her hair, but she is in poor health. Oh, she seems to like you because you are handsome. At the words of Park, I laughed loudly and suddenly burst into tears. I was embarrassed by the sudden tears. "I'm sorry. Oh, no." Looking at the old woman, I thought of my mother and felt sorry. Park gave me a box of tissues. We all do at first. I shed tears too. When I tried to have the saxophone mouthpiece in my mouth, I burst into tears again. I tried to calm myself down with a few coughs, but it did not work. Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. As I was speaking alone to myself, a social worker handed me a paper cup with water. I calmed myself down by drinking water and dipping my cane lead into the water and pulling it out. Park pulled the old woman's body up off of the floor. When she fastened the woman's seatbelt to her waist, she folded almost in half like a rag doll. Park turned on the karaoke machine and connected the microphone jack on the saxophone to the amplifier. I took a deep breath, installing my music device, and calmed down a little. The eyes of the elders moved like shadows along where I moved. Then the door at the end of the main hall opened with a creak. An old woman with white skin poked her head out through the crack in the door and peeped into the main hall. When her eyes met mine, she closed the door. She doesn't want to hang out with people. She once again pushed her face through the crack of the door and smiled. She pushed her head out of the door several times like a baby and grinned broadly. If a baby did this, I would smile because it was cute, but the sight scared me a little. I put the saxophone mouthpiece in my mouth. The performance of my music device was slower than the lyrics on the karaoke machine. Older people who knew the lyrics began to sing regardless of the performance. Today, taking the dress string in my mouth, to laugh together when the flowers bloom, to cry together when flowers fall, with the solid promise spring days go by. I was embarrassed because the beat was messed up from the beginning. I tried to come to my senses, but it was helpless. Park took the microphone from Grandma Young Me and turned it off. It was not until then that the main hall quieted down. Grandma Young-mi, we are not singing yet. We are listening to him. The boy sat her down on the sofa and massaged her shoulders kindly. Two social workers covered the screen of the karaoke machine with their arms and buttocks, but the old people pulled their heads around and opened their eyes to see the lyrics hidden behind them. The scene was funny, but on the other hand, I felt sad to think of them who had become too old to judge the situation. Park turned off the karaoke machine altogether. When I started playing with only the music device, half the old people dozed off, and the rest did something else. Only the social workers and the public service workers were applauding. The first performance was a complete failure. Park seemed to notice a sign of disappointment in my face. She asked me to play a song. Please play another song, The Spring of Hometown. It's the song that they usually sing here. When I started playing, the old people began to sing along with their eyes glistening. Following Park's movements, I raised my arms to accompany the clumsy rhythm. The old woman with the white skin sneaked out of the room and sat on the sofa with her hips lightly. Everyone clapped their hands, but there were not many people in rhythm. Park shook herself up and tried to raise the mood, but all of them were expressionless and clapping like a robot. There was a clear reason for her voice to be hoarse. It was a pity that she had to speak up even though they did not respond. I put down the saxophone and asked a question to cheer up the atmosphere somehow. Everyone, did you have lunch? All the old people looked at me with puzzled looks. Park burst into laughter. You already had lunch and sweet persimmons for snacks, didn't you? We have bad memories, sorry. At the words of Grandma Young-mi, the public service worker and the boy pretended to fall back and laughed. The boy jumped up and asked for the song, unconditionally. My heart for you is unconditional. The old people leaned back and laughed at the song, which the boy accompanied by singing and dancing to the rhythm. The boy made a heart shape with his fingers and showed it to the faces of the elderly. Each time, laughter blossomed on the faces of the elderly. One of them was roaring with phrases like, Wow, good, you go. The boy winked at the old woman who was retreating like a teenager. You had a lot of fun when you were a teenager, Grandma. The young boy was unusually good at holding the audience's attention. When his tricks were over, I began to play the song, The Wild Rose. Grandma Young-mi listened carefully to the sound of the saxophone. Then she rolled her eyes toward the ceiling and murmured. She seemed to be busily passing through the pages of the songbook stored in her head. When I started playing the next song, The Wharf, Grandma Young-mi got up in a hurry and grabbed the microphone. Only then did she remember the words of the song. At that moment, she got a spark in her eyes. She began to sing The Wild Rose to the rhythm of the song The Wharf. In addition, she stood up and danced with her hips shaking. When Park stepped up and took away the microphone, she became bewildered and hardened into a statue. She deserved to feel humiliated by losing her microphone twice, but Grandma Young-mi seemed okay because she completely forgot about what happened a little while after. I had a hard time playing the saxophone for an hour. If there were another volunteer, I could take turns playing and relax, but it was a little hard to do it alone. Do you think my music service will help them? I asked Park, separating the saxophone neck from the body and putting them into the case. Yeah, they need new things to see. Moreover, if you play good music, it will help them heal. Park glanced at the old people sitting on the sofa. My elders, would you like to see this saxophone player here again? If so, then clap your hands. The main hall was filled with applause. Grandma Young-mi, who had become a statue, came to me with a big smile and bowed her head. When are you coming again, sir? I will be back in a month. Can't you come back within 15 days? Grandma Young-mi hung on my arm, leaning her head like a toddler. I also used to be popular. It's a good time for you. The old man, Grandpa Jung-soo, muttered enviously.